As I said, I'm Federica Pancotti from Sogin. Sogin is the Italian state-owned company responsible for the decommissioning and radioactive waste management in Italy. And I am the work package leader of the HARPERS Work Package 4, focused on circular economy. So here the agenda of day-to-day training. So first of all, I will give you the introduction to the HARPERS Work Package 4. Then we will have 2 lectures for the clearance topic. So we will have the national regulations and criteria for clearance that will be delivered by Lionel Bastiennes, Belvi. Then we have the Italian regulations and criteria for clearance in the nuclear field as a practical example by Laura Manfredi from Nucleco. A very short lunch break, and then we'll move to the circular economy approaches in practice that will be done by Ludovic Vaillant from CEPN. And finally, we will have the lecture from SEK, CEN on conducting sustainability assessments in the field of nuclear decommissioning and waste management, as basic principles and focal points. So a very big program, but really interesting. Some rules for today, because we are a lot connected, so we need to have some basic rules. I will tell you first that a copy of the slides that will be presented by the different speakers will be available later on our HARPERS website. This session will be registered, and due to the very big number of people in the call, I ask you please to switch off your cameras, and only the speakers will have it open during their session. We will have some Q&A sessions after each lecture, and you can ask any questions you might have, and we will try to answer directly. You can use also the Teams chat to ask questions or to put your insight there, and we will try to answer as much as possible. But if we will not have enough time to answer to all the questions, we will then collect the answers later on and will publish them in the HARPERS website. After the meeting, we will send you also a link for a feedback form that I ask you please to answer, because of course your feedback is very useful for us. And finally, I hope and we hope that you enjoy the meeting and this training session. So we had 179 registered participants to this training session, and as you can see from the picture, they come from all over the world. We are really happy about this, and also proud that the topic that we are discussing today is considered so interesting by the public the community all over the world, and we hope you will enjoy our training session. So the introduction to the HARPERS VP4 will cover these points. So I will first give you a very brief introduction on the goals and the objectives of the HARPERS project. Then I'll move to the circular economy principles in the context of nuclear decommissioning and radioactive waste management. I will tell you something about the methodology that we used, which is based on a 2-staged approach. And finally, I'll give you some key achievements of our work package. So the identified benefits and challenges, the recommendations that we collected, and also some proposed suggestions for harmonization. So the HARPERS project is a 3-year project that started in 2022, and it will be completed next month. So the main goal was the establishing and clarifying the benefit and the added value of aligned practices and methodologies in decommissioning and radioactive waste management. So we went through the identification of the obstacles and issues preventing the implementation of a more common regulatory approach, and we covered three main technical areas. One focused on cross-border services and facilities, Work Package 3, and the training session for Work Package 3 was already done a few weeks ago. The VP4 focused on circular economy today, and then we had the VP5 so for the advanced technologies, and the training session for VP5 is scheduled in a few weeks. Then we have two transversal work packages, one focused on the strategic task and business case, and another one on the regulatory framework. The outputs of our project are a series of position papers on the specific topics selected on the three technical-minded work packages, a business case, and also a regulatory implications report. The realization of the aims of our project will contribute for sure to enhance the overall safety and economics of the nuclear sector. As you can see, we have 30 partners from 14 European countries. Okay. Now move to the circular economy. If we consider the life of a nuclear facility, normally the decommissioning phase follow the linear view. So everything must be removed before the site can be released and made available for other uses. And the waste in the linear view need to be stored, treated, and disposed on site or outside of site. In the circular economy, we have a different view because the circular economy represents a model of production and consumption, which is based on the efficient use of the available resources in all the phases. So this is done by retaining the assets and the materials in circulation at their highest value as long as possible, and minimize also the waste through processing like sharing, maintenance, repairing, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacturing, recovering, and recycling. I need to say that this definition has been developed within the HARPERS project, and it is based on the experts' view and also on feedback that we get during a Delphi study that we did. And a paper on this Delphi study is under development, and it will be public available in the coming months. Okay, if we move to the nuclear sector, so how circular economy can be relevant in the nuclear sector. For sure, it can be relevant both for the new nuclear facilities, because we can think about circular economy principles since the design and the licensing phase of the new nuclear facilities, but it can be relevant also for the existing facilities. And in this case, we already have some good practices in use. They include the sharing of facilities for waste processing, the reuse of radioactive and non-radioactive materials and equipment, recycling of metal components, reuse of equipment parts and buildings materials in construction projects, and also maintaining and repurposing of buildings. So the example of the already implemented good practices in terms of circular economy will be discussed later on in the CAPN presentation. And so we can see that even the old facility, the existing facilities were designed at the time looking for a linear life cycle. There is really a great potential to align their decommissioning with circularity principles. What were the needs that inspired our project? So basically, the different national regulations. which are really a big challenge for circular economy, because the different national regulations translate into different prerequisites for reaching circularity. And those issues were mainly focused on the waste management practices and policies, on the acceptance criteria for free release or for very low-level waste management, issue related to the radiation safety and environmental regulatory requirements, and even for the post-decommissioning use of the site, and of course, issue focused on the public perceptions towards the nuclear energy. So based on these specific challenges and needs that we identified for circular economy, we moved on our project. And as I said, we used this two-staged approach where we focused first on the phase one, on the identification of the priority areas for circular economy consideration, and with this prioritization with a very deep stakeholder engagement to identify the specific needs and opportunities for circular economy. And after the identification of these priority topics, we first open the project to any other external expert to contribute, and then we refine the scope of our project to move to the second phase of the project that was focused on the assessment of the business and regulatory impacts, and even on the evaluation of potential for harmonization. So finally, all the work that we did was summarized in a unique document, which is the position paper on circular economy. So on phase one, as I said, we moved to the prioritization of the needs and opportunity for circular economy consideration. We started on June 2022, and we first defined a list of topics focused on circular economy consideration. Then we developed some criteria for evaluation of those topics, and through these stakeholder workshops that we did to consolidate the outcome of our work, we were able to identify the priority areas for circular economy consideration in decommissioning and radioactive waste management in Europe. Those areas are those three. So basically, the first one was the national regulations and criteria for clearance, to analyze the differences between the national regulations, release criteria, and even the different approach that we have in the different European countries, and how they can impact the reuse and recycling of waste. The second topic was the benchmarking of circular economy approaches and technologies. And here we wanted to collect and analyze the actual examples and case studies for implementation of circular economy approaches and technologies in the nuclear and non-nuclear field, to identify what could be the lessons learned from those approaches. And the third one was focused on the sustainability assessment. So the goal was to set up a robust decision support framework to enable the comparison between linear and circular economy approaches in radioactive waste management and decommissioning. So the report on this first phase, so the prioritization of the topics, is available on our website, and you have the link on the top of this page. Now I'll move to the three topics, and I will briefly introduce them, but later on you will have more information from the other speakers. So for the national regulations and criteria for clearance, as I said, we wanted to identify the differences in the approaches in setting, implementation, and application of clearance in countries with the nuclear program, even ongoing or terminated, as a possible obstacle in supporting the circular economy, mainly in recycling and reuse of material. So we moved to with a survey to collect data. This survey was conducted among the HARPERS participants, and we collected the technical, environmental, commercial, economical, organizational and socio-political aspects. We did a qualitative and semi-quantitative evaluation, and we get even additional expert opinion. And finally, we consolidate the outcomes of our work during an online workshop with the external stakeholders. We collected a lot of data, so basically the regulations and threshold, so how the different countries implement the European directive. For recycling and reuse, we collected information about the materials that are considered for recycling and reuse, the extension of the clearance system within the member states, information about international collaboration on recycling and reusing. We collected even the technologies for recycling and reuse and information about the storage of materials intended for recycling or reuse, and challenges for the clearance system and public perception of the clearance. Then we added in our survey even information about how the conditional release is implemented and used in the different member states, and we were able to also to collect some suggestions and recommendations for future improvement and harmonization. The main conclusions that we get from this survey is that the release of material, especially the conditional release of material, is a key procedure that is subject to strict regulation and authorization process. And even if we have some basic criteria which are consistent within the European countries, the national application practices and are different, and in some cases we have additional conditions that make the procedure technically and organizationally demanding and difficult to transfer between different countries. So here an harmonization of approaches, so well-established good practices or even guidance at the European level can really help to facilitate the clearance process and the recycling and the reuse of materials among the different countries. We finally arrived at the conclusion that there is an agreement that the subject of circularity can be a non-negligible amount of material recycled and reused and can contribute to reduce the carbon footprint. However, the complexity of the process requires appropriate incentives and also research and development to support its implementation. So as I said, with the lecture of Belvi and Nucleco, you will have additional detail on these national regulations and criteria for clearance. For the benchmarking of circular economy approaches and technology, so the second priority topic, we wanted to share the practices, information, and lessons learned from circular economy approaches and technologies already implemented in nuclear and non-nuclear fields. So we wanted to make the best use of the existing literature, and also we wanted to provide case studies based on the HARPERS partners' experience. We collected 6 case studies that will be presented later on by CAPN, and we were able to identify the lessons learned, and we can share, of course, the outcome of these case studies with the stakeholders. For the third topic, so sustainability assessment, the goal was to set up a robust decision-making support framework to enable the comparison between linear and circular economy in the nuclear sector. So we first identify, we wanted to develop a multi-criteria analysis for this comparison. And we first developed a set of categories and criteria based on the literature review done by the project partners. And then we validate these categories and criteria through a Delphi study. We did 2 rounds for this Delphi study, and as I said, the paper is under development in this case. And in this Delphi study, we involved external experts and other stakeholders. And finally, we did an online workshop to consolidate the outcomes of this work. The main conclusion that we get from this multi-criteria analysis is that, of course, it's really subjective, the determination of which criteria is the most relevant and how the weight can be assessed to the different criteria. Stakeholders often prioritize different aspects based on their own view and own expertise. We have different stakeholders with distinct priorities, and the reconciliation of this priority is essential for the multi-criteria analysis, but it's really challenging, especially when we introduce principles for circular economy, which are not well established yet, and so they demand significant changes in the existing practices. Reliable data are required for comparing linear and circular approach. If we have limited or inconsistent data, we can have some uncertainty that can undermine the transparency and the credibility of the analysis. Balancing the short-term and the long-term objective is key, because linear approaches are often focused on the immediate cost efficiency, while the circular economy models emphasize the long-term sustainability and long-term resource optimization. Difference in national regulations and cultural attitudes can lead to disagreement over the best practices and can complicate the adoption of circular economy principles. The multi-criteria analysis and the Delphi study have been proved as effective solutions in facilitating the comprehensive and transparent evaluations. And clear communication, iterative stakeholder engagement, and even flexibility in adapting methodologies to suit the specific context of nuclear waste management and decommissioning is really important. Additional details on sustainability assessment will be presented by SCK during the lecture later. So the phase 2 was concluded with the delivery of our summary position paper, which is available online on our website. And in this position paper, we collected all the outcome of our work, so the circular economy challenges and benefits, what are the current state application of circular economy practices, potential solution and ongoing R&D activities on this field, benefits and impacts, and even some recommendations for future improvement. So here I will show you the key achievements for circular economy consideration. So for sure, circular economy can contribute in reducing the consumption of raw materials, in the decreasing of the amount of radioactive and non-radioactive waste to be disposed, in the optimization of the use of the available resources by, for example, repurposing of facilities and even sites, in lowering cost and environmental impacts, and finally in the commissioning process innovation. The main challenges that we identified are split into the 3 categories. For the technical challenges, we saw that there is still a limited capacity of existing technologies to decontaminate or even detect slightly contaminated radioactive materials, and this restricts their recyclability and reuse. For the regulatory part, The differences in national regulations create ambiguity in the application of clearance level and treatment of different material streams. So we have some inconsistencies that may impact even the public acceptance and trust in radioactive materials management practices. And for the social dimension, the public perception about recycling of radioactive materials remain a significant barrier for approaching circular economy. So recommendations to foster circular economy in the nuclear sector is to implement innovative solutions and promote and support ongoing research and development. Develop a robust evaluation framework, so really clearly defined and clearly measurable criteria to assess the benefit of the various strategies, linear and circular one. Harmonization of clearance practice at European level is needed, and this can be achieved through the establishment, for example, of a European working group to develop common guidelines. Recycling and reuse is a practice that should be considered since the design phase and in the decommissioning plan and in the licensing procedures in order to have this practice to be implemented later on. Research and development efforts should be focused on improving decontamination technologies, optimizing separation processes, and improving also technique to enable easier and faster measurements of activity. Promoting transparency and stakeholder engagement practices is crucial for improving the acceptance of radioactive material recycling. So here we see that a creation of a shared database documenting case studies can really strengthen trust among stakeholders. So all those recommendations has been translated in suggestions for approaching harmonization. So we identified 8 possible suggestions for approaching harmonization. The first one is to establish the European Task Force or a working group to focus on harmonizing regulations for conditional and unconditional release of material. Develop European technical guidelines based on best practices to promote waste area hierarchy and outline also standardized procedures for release, recycling, and reuse of materials. Implement a centralized database for material release, recycling, and reuse cases to allow transparency and to inform about some references that already exist. We can suggest a pilot cross-border harmonization project to test and refine harmonized release protocol across multiple countries, focusing at the beginning on specific materials. We can foster research and collaboration and innovation, of course, to promote a research initiative on innovative decontamination and material characterization techniques. Promote public and stakeholder engagement to increase transparency, public understanding and trust in the reuse of decommissioned materials. Standardized training and certification programs can help to ensure consistency in understanding and application of harmonized regulation and circular economy approaches. And finally, we can promote a legislative roadmap with phased implementation for regulatory harmonization. We can start with simple materials and then progress into more complex cases. So this is all from my side. Those are the partners who contributed to the HARPERS project, and thank you for your attention. If you have some questions, I'm here.